Welcome back to another episode of Leadership Lenses, your 15-minute podcast designed for busy heads of school, principals, and other Jewish educational leaders. I am thrilled to have with us today Rabbi Yoni Fein of Brauser Maimonides in Hollywood. Rabbi Fein and I actually go back to his days in Mariah in New Jersey. And back then when we first met, he was a young budding leader in charge. I think he was in charge of ed tech for the school. And now he's leading one of the fastest growing schools in the country. And not only fast growing in terms of numbers of kids, in terms of building, but most importantly, in terms of quality, in terms of education, and in terms of management of that education, which we are going to go into today. So Rabbi Fein, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. We go a ways back, and I know you've been so influential and helpful in the process of even BMA and helping us get to where we get to. So it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk more.
Amazing. So what BMA has done, and just remind me, how many students do you have right now?
754.
Okay, so a small school. 754, and I'm pretty sure that's because you have others on the waiting list and you just only have that much space in your building. And so when you got there, how many kids were in the school?
Roughly about 400, about 9 years.
So we've got almost doubling in size over 9 years, which is utterly insane. And what we want to talk about today is a system that you've adopted, which was actually mentioned by one of our previous guests, Dina Rabhan, for those of you who are our followers, avid followers and listeners, called EOS. The name, if you want to look it up, Entrepreneurial Operating System, but most important is what it does, how it works. And so Rabbi Fein, maybe just take us through first, what was the problem? What were the pain points? What were you trying to solve that brought you to look at some sort of management system?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I often find with EOS specifically, there's like a trigger there of this big system and big change and corporate, and at its core, it's really not all that. It's really about taking the best practices from organizations that are healthy, from decades of experience, and bringing those systems in a very easy, simple way to other organizations. We did find in our school the problems that we were facing. I think all heads of schools face, especially newer heads of schools, but I would say even veteran heads of schools. The job is very difficult. There's a lot of complexity in a school. You're operating a business, you're operating a communal organization and institution, very often for stakeholders that want different things, but the school has to be the place for their children, because we believe in our mission of educating Jewish children. Oftentimes those stakeholders are maybe your friends in your community, and you have dual relationships. You have a staffing structure that's kind of unique, to many organizations. Very much the market for staff is obviously a big question that comes up in our world. You have finance implications, and there's the dichotomy of leadership that every head of school has and every leader has. Where do you spend your time? What are the priorities? How do you get everyone bought into your vision? And especially as you get larger. So I definitely, and our team has definitely experienced, not just through the scale of growth and those challenges, but even before we grew, the regular challenges that schools face of how do you get it all done? How is it just possible to also be a dad and have time for your family and be a husband and also be growing and learning as an individual and a Jew, but also be there and showing up in so many places for everyone, everywhere. And it got to the point where burnout was real, and I was seeking a lifeline. I just wanted so badly for this vision we have and this passion we have to just take hold and catch fire. And it wasn't happening no matter what we tried to do. It happens to be our head of our strategic planning committee, who now is our board president, happened to have been not only running EOS in his business, but also became a coach in EOS to bring it to other businesses. And so he said, Rabbi Fein, we have to try this in the school. I don't know of any schools at the time that were doing it, but let's just try it. And we gave a commitment that this is not going to be about EOS. We're going to take the best of it, and we're going to adopt it as we need it for the school, and we're going to make sure that we're organizationally healthy. And I have to tell you, it's been a transformative moment in BMA's story and in my particular story, because from that moment till now, the change that has occurred in the way we operate and just the way that I run as a head of school, it's life-changing. So much so that I know John has brought it to many other schools. I know lots of schools now are are interested. So I'm excited to share more, obviously, but it's been wonderful.
Okay, so it's obviously a big concept, right? So why don't we start like this? Give us, I imagine there's like 2 or 3 core principles that are, this is at the heart of this approach. And then we'll get into a little bit more of some of like the practical changes that it generated in the school.
Sure, yeah. So EOS is basically built on best practices in businesses. So nothing that is in the system or in this approach is rocket science, right? If I told you need to have clear understanding of what culture you're trying to build and making sure you have the right people in the right positions in the school, you tell me that's kind of obvious. If I told you that there should be some clear vision that everyone knows where we're going to in strategy and how their role fits into that, you would say, okay, that's obvious. Nothing is rocket science. What EOS does, it takes 6 different parts of organizational health, and it has a system of implementation that is designed for organizations that are already running. If you're starting a school from scratch and you have a huge budget and 2 years of planning, you can design whatever you want to design. Change in schools is very, very difficult. To change what's already been done for a long time in a short period of time while you're running a school, it seemed to be almost impossible. And it takes very long to do it well. And by then, a lot of heads of schools end up switching jobs, and then new heads of schools come in, and then the whole thing starts from scratch altogether. What EOS is designed to do is in a short period of time, take very simple tools in each of those 6 components and bring it into the school while you're running. That's the magic. So the 6 components basically are, you have vision. Vision essentially is making sure that it's shared by everybody, and I mean everybody, even our parent body, knows who we are, why we exist, where we're going, and why we want to get there. So making sure the language is clear. Right?
So can you just like concretize that? Do you have a vision, BMA's vision that you can recite for us or paraphrase for a second? So what vision did you guys come to?
Sure. So I'll give you one component of it, for example. So in the vision, there's what we call a 10-year core target. Think of it as like the North Star, the thing that we're not even sure how we're going to get there. We have like 50% confidence we can even do it. But we know that if that's our North Star, we're going to get so much better striving for it. So our 10-year target is we're looking to redefine how do we measure success of a student in a school. We know that currently you have academics, you have grades, you have MAP scores, you have report cards, right? You have the academic data. And we know that for children who behave, there's like every report card looks different in different schools, but you have like behavior and learner skills. And that's about it. And when we got into the retreats that we do to get onto the vision, we were really talking about what do we actually want for our children when they graduate our school. We want them to feel connected to their Judaism. We want them to have a real connection to Hashem and have religious development. We want to have children that have social emotional skills to be resilient, whatever life throws their way. We want to be able to have children that know how to communicate in a world where technology has really impacted, I think, communication skills of our young children. So we want to raise healthy children that know how to balance tech and live presence, in their world outside and, in a non-tech world. Build relationships and know how to navigate complex relationships. They're getting even more complex with social media. These are the things we want to have. And there's no actual way to measure, like, how do I know a child was successful at BMA? So our 10-year core target essentially is creating the infrastructure and then eventually the systems of developing children holistically, truly holistically, but having a portfolio of sorts that measures that development and growth over time from early childhood through 8th grade.
That's amazing. Okay, so I love that because it's the question that parents always ask. And also, my own background and training was primarily in philosophy of education. And that is the question of the ages, right? To what end are we educating and what does an educated kid look like? The Mandel Foundation did their project Visions of what does an educated Jew look like? And you are aiming to try and present that to parents in a way that they can understand, and they can understand where their own individual kid is in that trajectory.
Exactly. But the best part is I like vision. I love ideas. People that know me, I come with ideas and I love ideas. But the truth is, if you speak to my team also, the vision is important because you have to know where you're going. But if you don't have the boat to get there and you don't have the systems to get there, then it's just nice. And it's good for social media posts, but it's not real. And so the beauty of EOS is that you still have to start with a vision because you can't get there if you don't know where you're going. But then it has to be married to a second bucket, which is traction, which is right below it. And essentially what that means is all the operatings of the school and everything that we're doing, in theory, should be driving us closer towards that core target. And so what we also have is a 3-year plan, which says if we want to get to there by 10 years from now, looking where we're at now, what needs to be true in 3 years' time to be on track for that? And so we're also flexing our leadership muscles on predicting and learning how to predict better, analyzing where we're at, what hurdles can come up, what needs to be true, which is a very important leadership skill that our entire leadership team is constantly working on every quarter. And that gets married down all the way to more minutia of like, then what's our 1-year plan? And then what's quarterly, what needs to happen to be on track, and ways of measuring that that's happening. So that's the way of marrying vision and traction in this system, which I think many heads of schools struggle with, because vision is one thing, getting it to actually happen is quite another. And I can tell you from a personal experience, if someone's very good with vision, it often means they struggle on the traction. It's hard to do both sides of that brain at the same time, which we'll get to some of the other parts of the model that rounds it out, helps also that to happen.
Okay, so I love this for a few reasons. Number one, so I spent a fair amount of time, I still do, doing strategic plans for schools. I don't believe that any more than 50% of the strategic planning processes actually conclude with a plan. I'm not talking about mine. All of mine conclude. But, people out there, it's really hard. And then if you do get a plan together, I don't know, a shockingly small percentage actually get implemented, because you've got this big, beautiful plan, and then you've got your weekly admin meeting, and the two never connect. And so you're saying this connects it. We've got our North Star.
Yep.
The 3 years is some real significant steps. The 1 year is maybe small steps. And then quarterlies and weeklies are like the minutia of how do we make sure we're moving to that North Star every day of the year.
Exactly. And so when we round out the other 4 pieces, that's exactly it, is that what the tenet of the system is that it's a system. I've spent time, and I made that mistake, although it's been wonderful in the moment, where I invest heavily in one area. I'm like, we're going to build culture and just go all in on culture, or we're just going to go all in on vision and make this wonderful strategic plan, or we're going to go all in on metrics and looking at our report cards and making sure those metrics make sense. Each of those in and of itself is valuable in the moment, but it doesn't create sustainable change because they're not linked together. And so the beauty of this is doing all those things together is not just nice, it's necessary for the entire organization to be moving it in the right direction. And so we talked about the vision and traction. So you talked about meetings as another example. A third part of that bucket is what it's called issues, but essentially it means is how do we as an organization have a system for raising ideas and issues and roadblocks that come along the way at all levels of the organization, and making sure the right people are addressing them, and like the meetings are actually moving them forward. So like a little snippet, which is awesome. Every team in our school now is running what we call L10 meetings, level 10 meetings. And those meetings are very structured through the program, where we touch in on culture, we shout out people, for doing things that match our culture values. We check in on all of our rocks weekly and say, are you on track or off track? So everyone knows what a rock is. It's basically our like highest priority thing that you and your role have to get done over the next 3 months. So that's our way of making sure that we're actually moving this plan forward. We look at our to-dos and say, someone was supposed to do something by last week. Did you get it done? Which brings accountability in a healthy, and positive way. But then we spend our time with those people addressing the most important issues that are facing that team. And the system is designed to make sure that whatever resolution is happening, that is shared with the right people around the room. Meetings are like, I'm sure you talk to so many leaders that tell you like death by meeting. Meetings are the worst. Look for my L10 meeting is the best part of my week. It is the best part of my week. And
would everyone else in the meeting also say that?
So I was going to tell you, the way we know that is at the end of every meeting, it's why it's called an L10, everyone in the room has to rate the meeting out of 10.
Oh, wow.
And if it's below an 8, they have to explain why. And then we write that into the notes for the next time to get better. And so I can tell you when our meetings on average are between an 8.5 and a 9.0, that is telling me that this meeting is getting value. And the goal is to make sure that if you're in a meeting that is consistently not adding value, you should not be having that meeting. But another thing that it does, I love football. I mean, okay, timeout. Steelers won their home
won the season opener, not the home opener. So I'm just putting a little shout out there because it's been a long few years for us. But we will end at 9-8 like every year. So
I'm a Jets fan, so I'm actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm grateful that the Steelers did that so early. So like, I can just get it out of the way and okay, we're going to also end up 9-8, but I'd rather not have the hopes, given out.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
But yeah, so I love football, and one of the things that connects vision and meeting structures, like those two buckets, is when you're looking at a football game, the quarterback gets to the line, and there's a lot of complexity. In a very short period of time, you have to read the defense. You have a whole team of people in a lot of different positions that all have to do exactly what they're supposed to do for it to work out. If not, something really bad can happen on the field. Even people can get injured. And the quarterback is seeing the greater vision of the play. Everyone has to trust the quarterback and trust the play and trust the coaches and do their part no matter what they're seeing. But what happens if you see something and you're like, it's not going to work? So there has to be a common language of an audible. Sometimes it's as simple as just going like this, or like a hand motion, or it could be a word they use. But you have to have a common language where everybody knows that when I do this, everyone knows what they need to do and why. Imagine if the quarterback goes, I need a meeting. Let's get a meeting together. I saw the defense. It's not going to work out. And we're gathering in the conference room. We're going to have an hour-and-a-half meeting to discuss it, analyze it, and then we're all going to discuss what we think should be the best play. It's crazy, right? And it's true in a lot of industries. I mean, obviously the things that are more obvious, like the army, our lives are at stake, but in hospitals for sure. But in every industry, you want a common language where what you're trying to do is get a lot of people together to do something really well and to do it in tandem. And so meetings are really there for intentional purposes. And this system is designed in a way for the best possible meeting. But then you have to have a common language of how do you work together outside the meeting so we can get things done efficiently, because time and money in a school is kadosh, and we don't have a lot of it. And you
have very, very little meeting time. I mean, I always find that schools, okay, if you're on the football field, there's very little time for meetings. You get to meet all week. In a school, especially if you're dealing with teachers or department heads, you have no time. You're always going somewhere. So I understand senior admin. Do you have other groups that you figured out like creative ways to make meeting times, or is it that the meetings are so valuable that they don't take as much time, or people are just more interested in them?
Yeah, so it's there are other parts of the system that help avoid meetings as the way to solve problems. Ideally, meetings are not the solution. They're there more for accountability and making sure that we're not dropping the ball. But ideally, the systems are designed to solve things before a meeting. But the answer is yes. I mean, the teachers, it's always a difficult thing. You have to care for teachers and their time. And there's never enough time in their day to do what is expected of them in the job nowadays. So we do have after-school meetings once a week, and we use those often to kind of get together and use some form of an L10. Every team has different forms of how it looks. But essentially, the philosophy is that every person in the organization should know where they can bring their issues or ideas, and they should know that there is a system in place consistently to address them and solve them.
So give us one example. I'm going to just requote that. You have systems that solve problems. Yeah. Meetings don't solve problems.
Yeah.
You have systems in place. So give us an example, because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, okay, I got problems. I got that part covered, and I've got meetings, but like, what are you talking about? Systems that solve problems.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that they do in the training is actually training the staff on how to first define the problem. How often do we know that the reason why we didn't solve the problem properly is we misdiagnosed it? So a good example, someone might come to us and say they were frustrated by a certain program, that the program was not done with the collaboration of other people, and they felt like the program could have been better had they collaborated more with other people. This is an example, right? Or they took time out of one class versus another, and the teachers were frustrated because they wished that wouldn't have happened. So what is the first thing that leaders tend to do? So they'll jump to right away, like, okay, let's talk to the person that ran the program and give them feedback, right? Like, next time you should collaborate with those people, or to find out what went wrong and try to unpack it, right? We love to unpack things in schools and leadership. Let's unpack it. And in unpacking it, you might find that there might be other aspects to the problem, such as, was it clear to everybody what the process of creating programs is? We make assumptions, but perhaps it wasn't clear. And this person might have come from a different school or might have done it differently, and they didn't even realize that is what is expected of them. It could be that it's a person issue. maybe the person who ran the program is not the right person for that job, right? And that then no matter what system you put in place or how much you unpack it, it's going to continue to happen. It could also mean that it's a culture issue, right? Maybe the person did everything they're supposed to be doing and did it right, but you have only a couple of people on the team that are not bought in to the culture we're trying to set of like collaboration and, and it's an ego thing. They want to know everything that's going on. It could be a vision problem. Maybe the staff didn't understand the importance of this program and how it fits the vision. So you can already see that the different layers, very often the issues we have multiple of those pieces. One of the things about our meeting structures actually is that meetings are meant for teams where there's natural tension. This is one of the most valuable lessons I've learned in leadership from actually a board member. I'm not gonna say his name because he likes to be in the background, but he taught me something so powerful. Early on in my career, I was frustrated because I wanted to spend and I want to get new programs and try new things. And you always go to a finance committee and eventually they're like, but do you really need it? And do you want it? And it's hard, that tension of spending versus not. He pulled me aside privately and said, I'm going to teach you something. There is a healthy tension that needs to exist from the different departments. Your job, Rabbi Fein, is to come into the room and ask for as much money as possible because your job is to advocate for the program, what you need. And our job is to push back in certain areas to make sure we're being financially responsible. And when those two healthy, positive, trusting tension exists, a solution, an integrated solution will come across. The moment the finance committee stops asking, we're going to misspend money and we're going to be in bad shape. And the moment I stop advocating because I'm afraid of the no, then my team and the product are going to suffer. The same is true at every level of the organization. Think about when we want to run a grandparents' day for fundraising. And the development director says this is essential. We need to bring our grandparents in so they feel part of the school. And the operations team says, this is a huge ordeal and parking, and we don't have the staff for it. It's too much. It's a lot. And then you have the teachers who are like, we're taking time away from the classroom. Is this really necessary? Happy to do it. Not sure if we should. The finance department goes, we're going to spend all this money on grandparents. It never yields as much money as you think. Then what ends up happening is the head of school always has to come in and play like, mommy or daddy and say, here's what we're going to do. In a healthy organization, the people in those roles realize that is their job. There's a healthy tension that should happen as long as we're advocating based on a vision of what we should be doing. And there should be a system in place to integrate those and come up with the best solution for the school. In the EOS model, I have an integrator, a member of our leadership team, who actually serves in that capacity on my behalf, that will often solve a lot of problems on the ground on my behalf between those different departments to make sure that roadblocks are not being in the way and that they're not waiting on me to make those answers, which is
and doesn't need to get to a meeting because you have a structure in place. And I love that the balance, right? So we talked philosophy. This is a little bit of Hegelian philosophy. You got your thesis and your antithesis, and then you have that beautiful synthesis. But for those who that didn't make any sense to, basically we have all the members of the team understanding that they have unique roles working to the same goal. So you've got your lineman blocking, your running back, dropping back for a play fake, and then you've got your receivers going out for the pass. They all have to do their own thing. And in your case, you're noting they're purposely serving as a checks and balances function for each other. So they're not fighting, and they have to understand they're not fighting. They're keeping the school in balance. They're keeping the organization in harmony.
Yeah. And you touch upon the fourth bucket, which is, I think, the most important of all of them, honestly, because I believe culture eats strategy any day. And as you said in your experience with strategic plans, you can have the best plan in the world. If you don't have the people to execute it, it's not going anywhere. People's everything. But we also get people wrong. We assume that because someone is in education or they're an excellent teacher, that they're the right person for our school. And very often we find that the most talented teacher available sometimes is not the right fit for our particular organization. And sometimes we find that you have someone who's the perfect fit for the organization, but they're not thriving in the role that they're in. And what EOS does, which I love, is it gives a language around what does it mean to be the right person for the organization culturally, and what does it mean to be the right person for your seat. So two things happen in the process that we love. The first is we built with the staff in a very fun way, actual language, we call them our core values, but there are 5 to 6 very concrete, very objective and observable behaviors that we feel match our organization's culture, that if everyone did these 5 to 6 things all the time, we are going to be the greatest culture in the world. And so we built that for our school specifically, to the point that if some other school saw our core values, they would look at them and say, like, that's not us. Awesome.
Right.
Good.
And they should, right? If they say that's also us, there's like, we can't all be the organization of integrity. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And what's amazing is we tell our students all the time, right? Like, we don't hold our students accountable for failing at something if the expectations weren't clear. If we gave them a test on something that they were never prepared for, we would say that's unfair. And how often in culture we come to the conclusion that a staff member is toxic, or they're misbehaving, or they're not a good culture fit, but we didn't give them the language, like, what are the clear expectations? And I was surprised in this process how many people I would have said at the beginning, I'm not sure they fit our culture. And then when the language was clear to them, they stepped up and they really were able to be culture boosters. We do a lot of fun, sticky things too. Like, we have our pin ceremony that we do. We do a lot of cool pins and stuff. But we shout out at every staff meeting across the school. Every single meeting starts off with people headlines. And we share, like, shout outs of how we saw someone do one of the core values. And at the end of the year, we give out pins to those who exemplified one of those core values. So our culture is magic, but a lot of it is because the basic rules of it were just clarifying what the culture we're trying to see, and then celebrating and holding people accountable to those expectations.
Right, right. Which is, first of all, I love that. I'll note that it's not like Rabbi Fein walked into a school where the culture was magic and amazing. This is the result of work and explication. And I love that assumption of it rests on two things. Number one is that which Brene Brown, I think, talks about, which is a hard point to understand. People are actually doing their best.
Yeah.
And we like to assume that they're being jerks, but what we attribute to some sort of malice is often just not understanding or not being able. And we can solve a lot of that just by saying what we want and need, which we're like, if I have to say it, then they don't even deserve to be here. Like, no. Yeah. Say it, explain it, and then they'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to clarify a point. So what's very interesting is I actually came to BMA for the culture. Like, when I moved here, I was taken by the warmth, so taken by the culture that pre-existed before I got here. But what's interesting is we didn't codify it in any way. So as new staff came in, and especially as we grew so quickly.
Right, you doubled in size. That's when you lose your culture.
You lose your culture. So what we had to do is take what was working, but make language around it so that we can onboard and train and recruit teachers that fit what made BMA special. And that's what was so great about the process of this. It wasn't like we just came out of a admin meeting and said, these are the 5 things we're asking them to do, and now do them. We built it with the staff. So, for example, our number one core value is exuding warmth. Yeah, you have to exude warmth. It's not for everybody. Some very talented teachers are incredible at getting their kids high achievement in the classroom. They're just not warm. School, if you are walking around and you're not warm, you will stick out like a sore thumb, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's our culture. So we took what already existed, but now we made a language around it. But also we looked at ambitiously and aspirationally looking at what do we want to get to, and we use language around that too. And so it's a beautiful process that honors history and honors what's currently going on. And it also gives room and space for the staff to think bigger about, well, what kind of culture do we want to create as well? It's a good mix.
Absolutely. Okay. So this is amazing. And as you can tell, I'm sure we could do this for another 12 hours easily. But like L10 meetings, we end on time. So I want to wrap up and highlight a few things. Number one, EOS is an amazing system. If you want to check it out, you can contact Rabbi Fein at BMA. I know his contact info is on their website. You can also reach out to me and I'll refer you at the usual ways of reaching us. But it's not just about EOS per se. It's about the lessons that you get from it. So the lessons that we're talking about are the crucial nature of vision, the crucial nature of a culture that you actually talk about and you explicate and you put out there. Yep. And then a set of practices that brings that to the ground. That is what in EOS you call your traction, yep. Your pins, your cultural practices, your explications, your meeting structures. And if we can get those two major elements together, and obviously there's multiple amongst the 6 principles there, but if we can get those elements of the vision and values on the one hand and the systematic implementation on the other, you can move a school, even one that's doubled in size over the last number of years, and you set it up for the future. So this is amazing. I hope that everybody listening is saying, like, I want to learn more about these concepts. I want to learn more either about this system or something else I can do along these lines. And if you do, again, feel free to reach out. You can reach me at Barry Kislowitz on LinkedIn, at our Substack Leadership Lenses, or our website kislowitzconsulting.com. You can reach Rabbi Fein. I'm just putting this out there, Rabbi Fein. So you're just going to get some emails. And what's the best way to reach you?
Rabbi Fein at brauser.us. It's also on our website as well.
Amazing.
Happy to collaborate with any school leaders. And also, I forgot to mention, but the board has done this too. And that's been also, my board is unbelievable. Amazing. And it's been wonderful. So there are a lot of great conversations to continue, and happy to have them.
Okay, so we're going to pin that because I want to come back and do a separate issue just on how you fix your board. We're doing a lot of board related stuff, so we're going to apply this separately. But in the meantime, call Rabbi Fein. He works about 27 or 28 hours a day, so you can reach him. And thank you, Rabbi Fein, for giving us this half hour. It's been really, really fun, and I'm sure really beneficial for everybody listening.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to continuing the conversation. This is awesome.
Wonderful. Have a great day, everyone.